So, okay, my mic was off. Okay, so once you're here, and I go like this, I'm not just doing this and stepping up. What you have to understand is how the body is moving and turning. So if I go like this, that relationship, you look at the hands and the leg, the position. Because when I'm here, or when I'm here, those arm positions have a relationship with the lower body. So that relationship is something you have to build it as an understanding. So when I pick, or when I do this middle block, that cross connection is what builds the balance and movement and strength and posture. So posture, the different postures have structure. And that structure and integrity of the position allows for the movement to have the strength of the position, but yet every position has a weakness. So when you go into a strong position, then you have to be able to move through the weak position. So that's something that your body will discover over time. So what's a weak and strong position? When you're in a leaning stance, the strength is in this direction. When you're in a horse stance, the strength is in this direction. Okay, so where are the weaknesses? Well, if you're in a horse stance, you're weak front to back. When you're in a leaning stance, you're weak side to side. So those are the two, I guess the weakness side of it are the positions to avoid or not allow your opponent to capitalize on those weak positions. So the weaknesses are what you have to overcome by compensating for that position. So say for instance, if this is my strong position, that's where you would strike. But then when you turn back to avoid the weakness of this position from side to side, you'd have to turn like this to have a direction of movement. So between here and here is where you have to work with that space. Because once I turn to here, it's still going to be weak here until I turn back to here and create a direction of movement that allows me to capitalize on. So the transitional side of it has to support some of the weaknesses of the position. So you never stay in the weak position very long. You have to pass through it. So that's something that your body will start to pick up and identify. So those are the places where you're probably passing through and getting, or at least avoiding the imbalance of that movement. So, while we're going from one position to the next, we have a strong position. That's the direction here. But then a back fist, where does the back fist stop? It stops here. It doesn't go to over here. So it's really aligned with this. So there's your strength in a direction, but yet I say this is going to be weak. So when we go like this, your body has to connect to the opposite side. So it's really not just like this. It comes to here. Okay? So that happens even when we're here. So when we're here, we have to strike out, then it passes through. You see, it turns this into a directional and here. So when you just put too much, it's not good. You have to stop it here. And then you have to transition out of that to get to here. Because there was a point where it became extreme. So how do you avoid that? Is that you have to spin the body. And then you come back into this. So that gives you, a sense of balance. Now, it doesn't matter if you land it. If you land it, then it doesn't matter because now you have a resistance in the direction to compensate the balance there. But if you don't land it, like in the form, then you have to balance the movement within the transition. So that's something that your body and your experience will allow you to adapt to. When we do the elbow, you notice it's in this direction. It's not in this direction. You don't go in that direction because it's not unsupported. The direction of the movement is here because the stance is here. Okay, so that's where the elbow is going. Now, if you notice when we do a rolling elbow, you have to stop it here. Why? Because if you don't stop it here, there's no balance and compensation to equalize the force. So when we do a rolling, the power comes from here. So there is tremendous power that goes here, but you have to compensate not by letting it go there. You have to elbow and cup your body so the force goes downward. Okay. So that also applies to your corner back fist. Your corner back fist doesn't go like this and then reaches out. That's a mistake a lot of people don't understand. Because when you do a corner back fist, you have to sink. When you sink, then your forearm turns like this. So forearm turns like this. So that's the corner back fist. A corner back fist doesn't go out. Right? So you talk about dimensional change in your movement. Three-dimensional movement or dimensional changes really capitalize on the direction of your force tied to the position of your body. So if I go like this, if nothing stops it, then you know what keeps you from falling over? Your body. Body what? The body's brake. You have to break the movement, meaning stop it. Because if you stop it, then it keeps you from falling over. Well, why do you put the brakes on? To stop it. But what happens when you put your brakes on the movement? It slows it down, and it negates the force that you created in this direction. So what you have to do to compensate for the direction of force is change directions. So you end up like this. Now the force becomes impactful and strong in a direction. So a corner back fist goes down and then it goes out. So there's a two-dimensional movement there that you may not see. It's not just that. So that's something, if you're doing iron wire form, double back fist, it doesn't stay flat. You have to control your skeletal structure to change the angular position of that strike to capitalize on the directional force. So that's really, how your body adapts over time. Some of it can happen through discovery. Some of it happens because of, the guidelines that a teacher might express to you and explain to you why a certain movement has to be a certain way. Like the back fist. Okay, most of the people doing a back fist are going to focus on this. But they shouldn't focus on that. It should focus on the body, the leg, and the elbow. Or here. The force is not generated from here. The force is generated from here. Because when I go like this, then you have to sink the elbow and tie it in there. So body mechanics and leverage of the movement comes from the body in motion. One of the things that we try to avoid, especially in trying to develop the best strength in your movement, is to avoid putting on the brakes. Because once you put on the brakes, this is putting on the brakes. That's kind of learned behavior. You put the brakes on because you think you have to stop it. Actually, not putting on the brakes allows the force to transmit. When you go like this, when you turn and punch, the punch has to come out. Boom. So that when the hand comes out, the force goes through. It's a carry through. Lets the power get to the end of the movement. If you go like this and you're pulling back before the movement goes out, then you're putting brakes on the movement or stopping it. Because what's creating the motion to begin with are your muscles, right? Your muscles is driven by the mind. The mind says do this and you do that. So while it's telling it to do that, you're telling it to stop it. You don't want to do that. you don't want to stop it because the power doesn't go through. So that's really approaching a level of understanding what Fa Jing is, or what is, Jing, strength. It comes from a skill, and that skilled strength is learning to capitalize on letting the force come out, using the best structure and the best transition in a direction, maintaining the strength of that posture in that direction. That's why we have horse stances, leaning stances, and so forth, because we have to transition from here to there and then back. That's all that happens. When we're in Tai Chi, it's the same thing. We go from here to here to here. It's just moving within the realm of the space. But how do you avoid the weaknesses and the strengths of position is really a skill level that your body begins to understand. So how do you neutralize the force, how do you read the effect of force, is really through the geometry of your position. When we go forward from dragon and we sink down like this and we turn like this, the fact that the hand just do this is actually taking the force away. You don't meet the force like this. If you meet the force like that, that's putting on an obstacle. You don't block like this. Just like when someone throws a ball at you, a baseball, you don't stop the ball. A hard ball is very hard, and it's thrown at you at such speed, and you go like that, it's going to not just power through your hand, it's going to shatter and break your hand, right? So if someone threw a punch, would you do that? You're going to stop the punch like that? No. The first thing you would do, if it's a baseball and you know you don't have a glove on and you can't stop it, is you're going to avoid it. You're going to let it go. So if someone throws a fast punch at you, you would want to let it go. So that's what turning, twisting, and moving to the side is, to avoid. First line of defense is to avoid. How much do you avoid? There's two extremes. Something comes, that's a big avoid. Kind of useless. It didn't hit you, but you can't do anything to respond. The best avoiding is as small as possible. So how you manipulate your skeletal structure to avoid the force is why you would move your body torso. That's part of your body form. Why do you turn here, then you turn here, and you turn here? It's creating the body imagery and the form because that's what you're moving around. You're moving around to avoid the force to come to the body. And then what do? You supplement that motion with this connection. So your bridge becomes the connection to control the force, but you don't meet the force directly, you come in from the side. Neutralizing the force is changing your body form so that once you connect, it gets shifted to the side. Then you control that shift because once force comes out and it reaches its maximum potential, it has to be redirected. Once it's redirected, it reaches a point of zero. It's weak. At the point it approaches zero, you redirect it and take advantage of that force. That's borrowing strength. Borrowing strength is taking the force and utilizing the force that came from that, whatever it is, a punch or whatever it is. You redirect and borrow the strength and capitalize on that. So what makes that? It makes it efficient and not a waste of your own energy. So when you avoid, you connect, and you change directions and capitalize on that position is why we would do something like this. Right? So those maneuvers in the form are really teaching you how to move from right to left. Right? So what happens when you move from right to left is that you're taking the force and disrupting it. That's the disruption technique where it takes your movements into the body and then you change. That disruption throws imbalance. That energy is called wave energy. That wave energy is like the water in the waves. Right? It's called bulong, like a wave. When a ship is in the ocean, it's pretty stable till there's a storm. Once the storm creates the water to move, no matter how big that ship is, it starts to move It starts to wave. So disrupting a large force really has to do with how you're moving within the realm of that. So that's part of water. When we do movements, water punch, it's a wave. It's a disruption of that movement. This strategy, parts of the physical science, is part of body, part of mechanics. What happens? How do you create those kind of energy in the body as sort of a metaphor or an idea? We capitalize on that through our movement in the body because we're capable of manipulating our skeletal structure. So when we're in a position and we come like this, how do we create like a tiger, like that? So when we're like this, like in footwork, we create that action from the body learning to move like that. This is really interesting, but it's also, what supports, the body form that we're talking about. Those body forms are called images. Images are images of the tiger, the crane. These are ideas as an image, but then the transition become utilizing their potential. Cranes are soft, tigers are strong, using their force, using the leopard as the speed of the leopard. So that's why when we use these, this just gives you an idea of how the body has to be. I call it the manipulation of skeletal structure. Nothing is still. When you move, everything is moving as one. So that's something that we begin to understand. It's called the unification of one. That's what we practice in the Yethimon system and the Mudong system. But that oneness is actually in every system, in Kung Fu, in Tai Chi. That oneness is really a skill level that takes us to a deeper understanding of body mechanics. So that's, it's pretty deep, but actually there is a tremendous benefit from that because building great body mechanics builds great minds and brain plasticity. So if you're not exposed to any of these things and you don't practice any of these things, your body will break down as it ages. And if you age, what can you do to overcome that? Is this kind of training. Now, as you get older, your training evolves and you use less strength. You use less strength. There's a number of reasons. As you get older, you have less strength. You have less energy. So if you're practicing and you don't have more strength and you have less energy, your skill level increases, you still have the same efficiency because that doesn't deteriorate because your skill level increases as your strength level decreases. So that's something that to think about. And, a lot of my students, they've been with me for a number of years and they start at maybe in their 20s or 30s, then if you spend 20 years with me, you're going to be 50. You have to move like a wave to absorb it, then you let it out in a direction. So just think of someone taking a disc and they move, it's spinning. But where do you let that go is the 90-degree position tangent to the direction you want to send it. So when you move within the wave, there's a point within the wave that becomes a tangent of those circles. So you want to capitalize on that and let it go. The end of that movement will be the power transmission. So while it's hard to see the wave here, when you turn like this, you see the direction of force going there. So it's directional change, focus, and align. So that's where your body has to synchronize to create that line of force. So in Tai Chi, we would say the straightness within the round, or find the straightness from the round. That's really a tangent. So when we chun kill, we slide, we punch, where does the power come from? Here or here? It comes from here, right? So the body has to synchronize. That is actually part of the thing. Your hand doesn't come out straight. It comes out like this. So that gives you something to think about. All right, on that note, subscribe, thumbs up, The more you subscribe, get people to do it, the better for us. Okay? We'll see you next time.